This is an incredibly rare condition. There's less than 30 cases described in the world.
Shock is the only word to describe these births. A baby in India entered the world with 2 faces, 4 arms and 4 legs, leaving doctors speechless as he died within hours. Another child grew up unable to feel pain, biting her own fingers until they bled because her body never warned her of danger. In Vietnam, Minh Anh, cruelly nicknamed Fish Boy, was abandoned by his family after being born with skin so cracked and scaly it looked inhuman. These are not stories of miracles. Here are 15 heartbreaking realities of babies born with rare conditions. Number 15. Born with 2 faces, 4 arms and 4 legs. In July 2024, Rama Devi, a 38-year-old woman from Sitapur in Uttar Pradesh, India, went into labor and was rushed to the district hospital. She and her husband, Ramphal, had no reason to expect anything unusual. Local checkups had described the pregnancy as normal, and the family had spent months preparing for the arrival of what they thought would be a healthy baby. But when delivery began, doctors noticed immediately that something was wrong. As the baby's head emerged, midwives froze. Instead of a single face, they saw 2. When the body was fully delivered, the shock was overwhelming. The infant had 2 faces, 4 arms, and 4 legs. It was one of the rarest forms of conjoined duplication ever seen, a severe case of polymelia caused by an embryo splitting and then failing to fully separate. In most cases, the weaker twin is absorbed early in pregnancy. Here, the fusion continued to develop, creating a body with duplicated features far beyond what doctors normally encounter. The newborn's condition was critical from the start. Both faces struggled to breathe, and the cries were faint. Doctors tried to clear the airways and supply oxygen, but the internal organs were not formed to sustain life. In extreme conjoined cases like this, survival is almost impossible, even with advanced surgery. Within hours, the baby's heartbeat faded and death followed. For Rama Devi and Ramphal, the devastation was immediate. They had chosen a name, brought clothes, and imagined their child's future. Instead, they were told their baby had lived only a few hours. For the hospital staff, the sight was so rare that even seasoned doctors admitted they had never witnessed anything like it. What was meant to be a moment of joy became one of the most shocking and heartbreaking tragedies a family can endure. Number 14. Born without skin's protection. When Eliana Ellie Campbell came into the world in Brewer, Maine, in June 2024, her parents' joy immediately turned to terror. Doctors explained that Ellie had been born with epidermolysis bullosa, EB, a brutal and extremely rare genetic condition that makes skin tear and blister at the slightest touch. Instead of skin protecting her body, her fragile layer peeled away like paper, leaving open wounds. Even holding her could cause her flesh to split.
Ellie was not only at risk for extensive skin wounds, but also respiratory and nutritional issues.
From her first day, pain defined her life. Diaper changes tore skin off her legs. Feeding tubes rubbed sores into her face. Bathing her meant screams as warm water opened blisters across her arms and chest. Dressing her wounds required daily bandage changes that could last hours. Her mother described it as wrapping her child like a mummy, knowing every removal would rip more skin away.
If it had to go one way, I guess we would want it to be that way.
Every cuddle risked harm. Every kiss hurt. Doctors told her parents the truth no parent should hear. There was no cure. EB affects roughly 1 in 50,000 births, but Ellie's form was among the most severe. Children like her rarely make it to their first birthday. Her body was in constant crisis. She could not heal fast enough to keep up with the endless cycle of bleeding and infection. Her family clung to hope, sharing her story on TikTok, where thousands followed her fight.
The whole reason that she started the TikTok was because when we first found out about her diagnosis, we tried looking up.
They filmed her wrapped in bandages, still smiling through unbearable pain.
Despite living with a disease with no known cure, Eliana's presence radiated courage, and love.
But by April 2025, Ellie's tiny body could take no more. At just 10 months old, she died in her parents' arms. Her mother said simply, "She was in so much pain every day. I'm glad she's not suffering anymore." Ellie's short life was nothing but agony, yet her family remembers her as a fighter who endured the unendurable. Number 13. The girl who cannot feel pain.
None of us wants to feel pain, and we're especially protective when it comes to our children.
But what if your child couldn't feel any pain?
When Gabby Gingras was born in Minnesota, she looked like any other healthy baby. But within her first year, her parents noticed something terrifying. She did not cry when she fell. She did not flinch when she scraped her knees. She gnawed on her own fingers until they bled, yet she showed no discomfort.
3 years old when she took that spill in her garage. Gabby Gingras never felt it.
Doctors finally gave her parents an answer. Gabby had congenital insensitivity to pain with anhidrosis, CIPA, one of the rarest genetic conditions in the world. It meant she could not feel pain and could not regulate her body temperature through sweating.
Careful, careful.
At first, it might sound like a blessing, but for Gabby, it was a nightmare. Pain is the body's alarm system. Without it, her body was constantly under silent attack. She chewed on her tongue and lips until tissue was destroyed. Her parents were forced to pull out her baby teeth to stop her from biting off pieces of herself. She poked her eyes so relentlessly that she detached a cornea. Surgeons had to operate multiple times to save what little vision she had left. Every injury that would bring another child to tears left Gabby silent, but bleeding and broken.
Gently. Careful. Oh, you okay, Pumpkin? Are you okay? Careful.
Her parents lived in constant fear. No crying meant they never knew if she had broken a bone, sprained an ankle, or burned her skin on something hot. Her bedroom had to be stripped of hard edges, and she required constant supervision.
No, it's behind you. It's right behind your toe, right behind your heel.
Even running a fever was life-threatening because her body could not sweat to cool itself. Over the years, Gabby has endured surgeries, hospitalizations, and unimaginable precautions. Now older, she has learned to adapt, but her reality remains terrifying. Every day is a battle against a body that refuses to warn her when something is wrong. She is adjusting, but only because she has no other choice.
At this point, I'm mostly chewing with my gums, like I can only eat like the food that like a 90-year-old would.
Number 12. The Fish Boy. They named him Minh Anh, but in the ward, everyone calls him Fish Boy. Born in Vietnam with a rare genetic skin disease called ichthyosis, his skin is dry, scaly, and cracked, so much that people say he looks like a creature of the sea. He was abandoned by his family at birth. They left him in a hospital, ashamed perhaps, unable to accept what he was.
Day in, day out, Minh Anh goes nowhere.
He grew up in an orphanage in Ho Chi Minh City, among children with spina bifida, developmental disorders, and more. Even among them, Minh stood out. His skin itched constantly. The orphanage staff tied his hands at times so he wouldn't scratch until he bled. One day, a British woman named Brenda Smith visited on a charity bike trip. She met Minh and was moved. She promised to help, to try to change his life. Time, she and her husband became his advocates, pushing for medical care, better living conditions, treatment, and recognition.
So I only hope that this is, the beginning of a new life for him.
Minh Anh now lives in Lang Hoa Binh, a hospital ward in Ho Chi Minh City, where children affected, often by toxic inheritance like dioxin from the Vietnam War, are cared for. In recent visits, caregivers say his skin is worse, more flaky and cracked than before. Nurses bathe him twice a day, apply medications, try to keep infections away. But still, the disease is relentless. Every day, Minh fights just to live. He eats, sleeps, breathes, but under layers of pain. The world sees his skin, but under it is a child who was abandoned, then saved by someone's compassion. That is his truth now. Number 11. Split in two faces. Brody Shane entered the world in Rockwall, Texas, with his face literally torn in two. He was born with a midline facial cleft so severe that the right and left halves of his face never fused.
Born with a severe bilateral cleft lip and palate.
He also had an encephalocele, which meant that a portion of his brain pushed through an opening in his skull into his mouth. This is not just a cleft lip. It is one of the rarest and most extreme facial anomalies. It is a combination seen in perhaps 1 in 100,000 births. From his first breath, Brody struggled. He cannot feed normally, and he uses a tube. His airway is unstable. The room was heavy with shock when doctors first laid eyes on him. His mother, Brandy Shane, recalled how she froze when she saw two halves staring back. The condition is rare because, in most cleft cases, only portions of the upper lip or palate are affected.
Meaning his upper lip and the roof of his mouth did not fully form before birth.
For Brody, the separation runs down the entire midline. It affects his nose tip, upper lip, palate, and beyond. On top of that, the brain tissue protruding through his skull adds a dangerous layer of complexity. Surgeons do not often see such a convergence of anomalies. Now, at 11 months old, Brody is preparing for his first major surgery. Doctors will attempt to remove the encephalocele and begin the process of buttoning his face back together. It will not be just one operation. After this, he will need multiple more surgeries to move the halves closer, rebuild the nose and lips, and correct his structure. The first surgery alone will cost roughly $15,000 out of pocket. Brandy quit her job to care for him. She battles grief daily.
To see what he's gonna look like and, just getting, as my mom says, buttoned up.
But she also fights to hold on to hope. She says the surgeries are his chance to breathe, to eat, to grow, and maybe to have a normal life. For Brody, every moment is agony. But behind that agony is a family refusing to give up. Number 10. Silent smile, frozen face. Hazel is 9 months old, but she has never smiled. She cannot blink. She cannot move the corners of her mouth. From birth, Moebius syndrome robbed her of the ability to express joy, pain, surprise, or sorrow. The first time her mother, Victoria, held her, she expected the usual newborn reflexes. Squinted eyes, a little grin, a wrinkled nose. None of that came. Instead, Hazel looked at her with fixed, open eyes. Moebius syndrome is extremely rare. It causes paralysis of the facial nerves, especially 6 and 7 cranial nerves, preventing movement in the face. In Hazel's case, the paralysis extends to her eyes and eyelids. She cannot blink to clear tears or protect her eyes. Doctors warned the Labries that Hazel's eyes are vulnerable. Without blinking, they risk drying out, scarring, and infection. Each night, they apply lubrication and tape her eyelids closed. Every small cough or hiccup is monitored. They watch her face so closely, they know if an eyelid twitch might warn of something wrong. Victoria says she grieves for the smiles Hazel will never make. She mourns every first laugh, every toothless grin she imagined.
I think it's amazing that he cares so much about making sure she's okay.
She fears Hazel will struggle socially when she grows older. Other children will not understand why she never returns a laugh or a grin. Still, Hazel lives. She coos. She learns. She exists in a quiet world without facial expression. In her silence, her family fights for her medical care, for therapies, and for hope. Number 9. The boy with the bent neck. From the moment Mahendra Ahirwar was born in Madhya Pradesh, India, his life was marked by cruelty. He came into the world with congenital myopathy, a rare muscle disorder that weakens and wastes away muscle fibers. In Mahendra's case, it caused his neck muscles to be so weak that his head hung at a 180-degree angle, bent completely backward. This extreme presentation is almost unheard of, and doctors called it one of the rarest conditions they had ever seen.
Julie's online fund will pay for travel and hospital fees, but he has offered to treat Mahendra for free.
Instead of compassion, he was met with shame. Neighbors called him cursed, and other children mocked him. His parents, Mukesh and Sumitra, carried him everywhere because he could not walk. Even inside his own village, people stared and whispered. For years, his world was confined to a chair, looking at life upside down. In 2016, a miracle seemed to arrive. After his story spread, doctors in Delhi performed a life-changing surgery, implanting a metal rod in his neck to hold it upright. For the first time, Mahendra could look his parents in the eye. He smiled in photographs, sitting proudly in his wheelchair. His parents believed he finally had a chance at a normal future. He dreamed of opening a small general store one day, but the hope was short-lived. Just 8 months later, tragedy struck. On a quiet afternoon at home, Mahendra had lunch, watched cartoons, and asked his mother to rub his chest after coughing. He coughed again, tried once more, and then his body went still. His mother screamed his name and clutched him tight, but when the doctor arrived 15 minutes later, it was too late. Doctors explained that Mahendra's death was caused by complications linked to his condition. His weakened chest and respiratory muscles made it difficult for him to clear his lungs properly, and even a simple cough or minor infection could quickly overwhelm his fragile body. His heart and lungs simply could not keep up. Sumitra cried, "I didn't want to let him go." A boy who had endured so much pain, shame, and ridicule finally found relief, but only in death. Number 8. Born with an ear on cheek. When Megan and Justin James walked into the delivery room in March 2025, they thought they were about to welcome a perfectly healthy son. Every scan, every test, every appointment had reassured them that their baby boy was fine. But when little Vinnie James was born, silence filled the room. Doctors and nurses froze. His right eye socket was completely empty, and his right ear wasn't where it should be. Instead, it sat lower, pressed awkwardly against his cheek. Vinnie was diagnosed with an extreme form of Goldenhar syndrome, a rare congenital condition that affects only about 1 in 3,500 to 1 in 25,000 births. But Vinnie's case was even rarer. In most children, the syndrome causes mild facial asymmetry or small jaw bones. In his case, entire features were missing or misplaced. His family had no history of it, and nothing in the pregnancy pointed to such a devastating outcome. Right away, doctors rushed him into intensive care. Feeding was difficult, his airway had to be monitored, and the shock was unbearable for his parents. Megan later described how she had been ready to kiss her son's face for the first time, only to realize half of it hadn't formed as she imagined. Justin said he felt his heart break in a way he couldn't put into words. Vinnie spent 65 days in the hospital before being discharged. He will face a lifetime of surgeries, a prosthetic eye to fill the empty socket, operations to reconstruct his jaw, and eventually repositioning of his displaced ear. His parents cling to hope, but they also live with fear of what challenges he'll face at every stage of life. Is both a miracle and a reminder of the cruel rarity of his condition. Number 7. Blind from birth. When Renlee Ice was born in Missouri on November 6, 2023, her parents, Taylor and Robert Ice, expected the usual newborn challenges. They had struggled for a year to conceive. All ultrasounds and genetic screens came back normal. Everything seemed fine, until she arrived and didn't open her eyes. At first, no one thought much of it. Nurses told Taylor it was normal for babies not to open their eyes immediately after birth. But as hours passed, little Renlee still would not open them.
Some patients with the same gene change might just have one eye affected and it might be totally absent.
Taylor's heart pounded. She asked a pediatrician what was going on. He paused mid-examination, looked up at her and said, "Your daughter doesn't have any eyes." Taylor asked, "What do you mean, they're small?" The doctor replied coldly, "No, they aren't there." That instant, Taylor burst into tears. "I just couldn't fully process what that meant at the time," she recounted. Renly was diagnosed with haploinsufficiency of PRR12, an extremely rare genetic disorder. In her case, she was born without eyes, without optic nerves, and without eyelid tissue strong enough to open. Geneticists say fewer than 30 cases like hers are known worldwide. The syndrome disrupts normal eye development and can affect the brain or development in unpredictable ways. In the days after her birth, Renly was moved from Poplar Bluff to Children's Hospital in St. Louis for testing. For 9 long days, she was studied by neurologists, geneticists, endocrinologists, and eye specialists. Her parents learned that Renly also does not produce a hormone called cortisol, which disrupts how her body handles stress. Doctors have begun surgical interventions to help shape her face. They plan to unseal her eyelids and place spacers in the eye sockets so that her skull and facial bones can develop properly. In the future, they hope to implant prosthetic eyes for cosmetic structure, even though she will never see. Number 6. The child they fought to save. Charlie Gard was born in London in August 2016. From the start, his parents, Connie Yates and Chris Gard, hoped for a healthy baby. But soon after birth, doctors diagnosed him with mitochondrial DNA depletion syndrome, MDDS, a rare genetic disorder that deprives cells of energy and causes progressive damage to organs and the brain.
A rare genetic condition weakened his muscles and caused brain damage.
His body was deteriorating from within. As months passed, Charlie's condition worsened. He lost the ability to move, struggled to breathe on his own, and began suffering seizures. His care became a full-time battle. His parents, desperate to save him, found an experimental treatment in the US that they believed might help. But British doctors and courts argued that the treatment would not work and would only prolong his suffering. A dramatic legal fight ensued. Charlie's parents appealed to the High Court, then to the Court of Appeal, then to the UK Supreme Court. They even petitioned the European Court of Human Rights. The case made headlines around the world. The question: should life support be withdrawn, or should every possible intervention be tried? Doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital insisted that continuing treatment would be cruel, offering no realistic hope of recovery. In July 2017, the courts ruled in favor of withdrawing care.
In the end, a High Court judge said he should be moved to a hospice and his life support withdrawn soon afterwards.
Connie and Chris visited Charlie in hospital one last time. On July 28th, life support was ended. Charlie died, surrounded by his parents and palliative care nurses. His story is a reminder that sometimes love means accepting the deepest pain of letting go. Number 5. The boy with Hulk hands. In the dusty lanes of Chas village near Bokaro in Jharkhand, India, Muhammad Kaleem was born with hands so enormous they seemed impossible. From childhood, children in his village called him Devil's Child. They feared him. They whispered that his hands were cursed. He was shunned. He never went to school. He had no friends. He grew up isolated and tormented. When he was a baby, doctors diagnosed him with Proteus syndrome, a rare overgrowth disorder also called local gigantism, where parts of the body grow uncontrollably. Fewer than 300 cases are recorded globally. His palms measured 13 inches from wrist to fingertip. His arms alone weighed almost 8 kilograms, nearly half of his whole body weight.
Now weighing 5.5 pounds each, Kaleem's hands are almost useless.
His shoulders and back strained from carrying such weight. He could barely move. His poor family could not afford many medical interventions. But when pictures of Kaleem went viral, a film crew persuaded the family to let him travel for surgery. Surgeons in Coimbatore operated on his right hand. The procedure lasted 4 hours. They removed excess tissue and reduced nearly 50% of his hand's weight. Months later, they operated on his fingers, removing extra digits and disabling growth plates so the hands would not grow further. The changes were dramatic. His hands were still large, but lighter. The most beautiful part, Kaleem couldn't hold back joyful tears when he saw his hands for the first time. Number 4. Made of glass. When Zoe Lush was born in California in 2011, her parents thought they were bringing home a healthy little girl. But doctors quickly realized something was terribly wrong. During delivery, her collarbone snapped, and within her first weeks, she had already broken multiple bones. By the time Zoe was 1 year old, she had suffered more than 100 fractures. Zoe was diagnosed with osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, the most severe form of brittle bone disease. It is caused by a defect in the body's production of collagen, the protein that gives bones strength. Instead of being solid, Zoe's bones were so fragile that even a gentle touch could shatter them.
Zoe's condition is osteogenesis imperfecta, which means brittle bones, and it has nothing to do.
Her mother said it was as though Zoe was made of glass. The breaks never stopped. A simple sneeze could fracture a rib. Sitting up too quickly could snap her arm. Her parents had to carry her like a delicate package, terrified that one wrong movement would leave her screaming in agony. Doctors explained that her condition was one of the rarest genetic disorders, striking about 1 in 20,000 births. But Zoe's case was extreme. Her body was falling apart even before she was born. Surgeries became routine. Metal rods were implanted into her legs and arms to stabilize the fragile bones.
Her OI so far has affected her teeth. It can affect her hearing. The bones in her ears are just as fragile as...
Each procedure carried enormous risks, and recovery was brutal. By age 6, her medical records listed more than 200 broken bones. Now Zoe uses a wheelchair and continues to live with constant pain. She has learned to adapt, but every day remains terrifying. Number 3. The baby with her heart outside. Doctors at Glenfield Hospital in Leicester were stunned the moment Vanellope Hope Wilkins entered the world in December 2017. Her tiny chest opened and revealed the impossible. Her heart was beating fully outside her ribcage, held in place only by thin tissue. The condition, known as ectopia cordis, occurs in fewer than 1 in a million births. In nearly every case, death follows within minutes. Her parents, Naomi Findlay and Dean Wilkins, had been warned repeatedly during pregnancy that termination was the safest option.
If you saw when she was first born to where she is now and what they've done.
Every scan showed the same horrific truth. Their baby's heart was developing outside her chest.
She has a structurally normal heart, which most of these babies don't have.
Doctors said survival was virtually impossible, but Naomi and Dean could not give up. They decided to carry her to term, clinging to the smallest chance. The delivery room was tense. A team of 50 medical staff prepared for what they expected to be only minutes of life. Instead, Vanellope cried. Against all odds, she was alive.
When she was born, it fitted perfectly, didn't it?
Yeah.
A little glitch that she was sort of...
Immediately, surgeons raced her into emergency surgery. The procedures were dangerous. Any infection could kill her. Her heart, unprotected for so long, was fragile, tropicure, yet she survived. Over the course of 3 major operations, her heart was carefully placed back into her chest cavity and protected with mesh and her own skin. She became the first baby in the UK to live after being born with her heart entirely outside her body. Her parents had prepared for a funeral, but instead left the hospital with their daughter still alive. Doctors called her survival a miracle. Number 2. Inside-out baby. Samatha and Dylan Grant had been trying to conceive for a year. After a series of fertility treatments, they finally got their wish. But early in the pregnancy, things started to go wrong. At a 14-week ultrasound, doctors spotted an omphalocele, which meant organs were pushing outside the baby's belly in a sac. As scans continued, the picture darkened. The specialists told the Grants their baby had OEIS syndrome,
in the delivery room at Barnes Hospital for the very tricky birth of a baby with a rare birth defect.
A nearly untreatable set of birth defects, including omphalocele, exstrophy of the bladder, imperforate anus, and spinal defects. OEIS affects about 1 in 400,000 live births. Despite the bleak outlook, Samantha chose to carry the baby. She endured fear and uncertainty every day. When Dawson was born on December 23, 2023, doctors were braced for the worst, but he breathed on his own. The omphalocele had not ruptured during delivery. His liver and stomach were partly outside, and beneath them, his bladder and intestines lay exposed. At 10 days old, Dawson underwent his first major surgery. It lasted 8 hours. Surgeons peeled skin off the omphalocele, pushed organs back into his body, rerouted intestines for a new opening, ileostomy, and fixed the fact he had no anus. He spent 96 days in the NICU. The work had only just begun. When he was 20 months old, Dawson went under the knife again for a full-closure reconstructive surgery. That operation lasted 16 hours, involving urology, general surgery, plastics, and orthopedics. They recreated his abdominal wall, gave him a G button for feeding, converted the ileostomy to a colostomy, and created a urostomy for his bladder. But even then, his bladder was too small to connect to the urethra, meaning he will need the urostomy bag permanently. His parents call him a miracle baby. Samantha says, "That kid can be going through the worst thing ever, and he's still smiling." Dawson will never pass stool or urine in a typical way. His spine is malformed. His abdomen will never be like other children's. But he lives, and they fight for every day. Number 1. Dawson Grant, born with his organs outside. Samantha and Dylan Grant's joy at finally becoming pregnant quickly turned to fear. At a routine scan, doctors told them their baby had OEIS syndrome, one of the rarest combinations of birth defects known. The diagnosis meant their child would be born with an omphalocele, where abdominal organs grow outside the body.
Here you can see that sac that contains his organs, which formed outside of his abdomen.
Exstrophy of the bladder, where the bladder forms abnormally and sits exposed. An imperforate anus, meaning no anal opening at all, and serious spinal defects. As soon as Dawson was born, doctors immediately planned surgery. At just 10 days old, Dawson underwent an 8-hour operation. Surgeons carefully moved his organs back inside his body. They created a temporary opening in his small intestine called an ileostomy, which allowed waste to pass into a bag since he had no anus. They also tried to cover and protect his bladder, though it remained exposed and leaking. Dawson spent 96 days in intensive care before he was stable enough to go home, but his fight was far from over. At 20 months old, he endured a 16-hour surgery where surgeons rebuilt his abdominal wall, inserted a feeding tube, converted his ileostomy into a colostomy so stool could pass into a bag, and created a urostomy so urine could drain safely from his bladder. Dawson will always need stoma bags for stool and urine, and his spine will cause lifelong challenges. Yet his parents call him a miracle. Despite all the pain, he keeps smiling, proving his fight is far from over. What do you think about these cases? Comment down below.